Well, it's another big weekend in the world of racing and a gambler's delight with big fields, quality stakes all over the place on a combined Preakness Stakes and Fall Stars weekend. I'm Dan Tordjman with America's Best Racing. Again, thrilled to be joined for the next hour or so by Christina Blacker, who's on the ground in Baltimore to cover Preakness for TVG. We've also got Equibase's Keeneland aficionado and national handicapper Ellis Starr. Christina, welcome back to the East Coast.
It is good to be here, good to be with you. It's the first time I have traveled since February, so I'll admit it was a little nerve-wracking, but made it safe and sound, and I'm thrilled to go back to Old Hilltop this weekend. I haven't been to the Preakness in a couple of years, and it is always one of my favorite races to cover. And then, of course, Dan, you know I'm focused on those Keeneland races as well. I'm working on the Keeneland at Home show each and every weekend, so this is a great way to kick off a phenomenal next 5-6 weeks of racing with the Breeders' Cup coming up.
Christina, I'm envisioning you on a socially distanced flight, your PPs, iPads, laptops all spread out. Is that the way it played out on the flight over?
Yes, it was. I had the iPad, I had my stats up, I had my computer up, I had the thoroughgraph figures, you name it. I think people were walking by wondering what all those numbers and statistics were that I was looking at. But it was a great dedicated time to just dive into the form. It was fantastic.
Absolutely. So much to get into this weekend. Ellis, be honest, more excited to bet the races at Keeneland or the Preakness Day card? I know it's a tough call, but tell us what you're most excited about from a value perspective, making money. What's getting you more excited as we head into this weekend?
What's getting me excited, Dan, is the opportunity to handicap, the 10 race card at Keeneland on Friday, and then 11 and 12 at Pimlico, and pick between them. I'm not one or the other. And I will say, opposite of Christina's situation on the plane, I've been handicapping all week in my pajamas.
You and me alike, brother. I mean, look, we're home. I'm up north here. You're down in Kentucky, and no need to get dressed up. We're not going to be in front of too many cameras this weekend. So, well, look, let's jump into the action because there's so much of it. Before we do, just want to mention this weekend, Stats Race Lens offering two special promos to everyone. One in particular is a 30% off all subscriptions. Again, that's open to everyone. Promo code SRLBC30. It's good through the Breeders' Cup, so you've got about a month to use it and to activate it. 30% off your subscription. Promo code SRLBC30. And there's one that's only open to people who have never tried Stats Race Lens. If you've never tried it after watching this, certainly you're going to be more interested. $1 for a 1 month unlimited subscription of Stats Race Lens. The promo code there is SRLM1E. We'll also remind you of this at the end of the show, so stay tuned. Lots to dig into at Stats Race Lens. Last one we did, we gave you some good winners, including the Kentucky Oaks winner at a big price. We had discussions about Authentic as well, and we'll see if we could find a big price here on this big weekend. So let's kick things off with one of 9 win and you're in races between Friday and Sunday at Keeneland. And this one is one of the first that we'll see on Friday. It's the Darley Alcibiades in the Juvenile Fillies division. And that's where we'll kick things off. Trainer Kenny McPeek has 3 entered here. And Christina, you've got your eyes on one of them.
I do indeed. And I'm just really interested to watch, all of the fillies competing this weekend because we have Princess Nora out on the West Coast who could be your favorite for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, depending on the types of performances that we see from some of the other fillies this next week or two. Kenny has 3 in here, as you mentioned. He has Olivia of the Desert. He has Crazy Beautiful. And then to the outside, he has Simply Ravishing, number 7. And that's who I am most intrigued by in here. Another thing that's just interesting to note, I cover the sales a lot for Keeneland. And if you look at a lot of the sales results, for value, Kenny McPeek is one of the best in terms of purchasing yearlings and moving forward with those horses into stakes races, into, the races on the big stage that we're all paying attention to. This filly was a $50,000 purchase. She's a daughter of Laban. She's out of a more than ready mare. And as you can see, she has won both of her starts. He actually debuted her on the turf course at Saratoga going 2 turns. She did get an easy lead that day, but it's still a lot to ask to go 2 turns in the debut and to come home a winner. Her second start was the P.G. Johnson. As you'll see, that race ended up coming off the turf, but still no problem for her. She was a 6.5 length winner, again with some sort of tactical speed on the front end. And I'll take you quickly through the Kenny McPeak angle, because I know, Dan, you have some angles with regard to him as well. Ken McPeak with 2-year-olds in stakes races that were winners last out is a very high percentage, as you're going to see in a moment here. I like the fact that this filly has that route experience from the beginning. And there you see it, 2-year-olds, winners last out, all stakes races, 20% winners for Ken McPeak. That's 9 wins from 46 starts. And I think, Dan, just in kind of reading between the lines and listening to his comments about these fillies, I think he really feels like Simply Ravishing might be the one with the most raw talent. She's 2 for 2. To me, it seems like sky's the limit with her, and I'm looking forward to seeing what she can do in the Alcibiades on Friday.
All right. Well, that's good information too, knowing what sort of maybe leans a certain trainer might have, especially when you've got 3 horses enter a race and they all look extremely talented. So that's the 9th race on Friday. Because there's so much to get to, we're going to go to the 9th race on Saturday now at Keeneland, where we'll get the 2-year-old boys with their shot at a chance to go to the Breeders' Cup. That's the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity. And as you mentioned, Christina, I'm looking at a pretty similar angle with Kenny McPeak to the one that you mentioned. I've kind of just sort of narrowed it down a little bit more as it relates to the 9-horse King's Fury. So his Equibase speed figure on debut, if we could go to him real quick on King's Fury, we'll see that debut figure doesn't jump off the page. It's a 74. It's not anything that flashy. But if you watch that replay, he won that race while wide all the way. He kicked on, did it very professionally for a debut runner. And here's the thing. Kenny McPeak, for all his success and as many times we can remember him having runners in stakes races, especially 2-year-olds, he doesn't win that often first out. I mean, I don't say he doesn't win that often, but relatively speaking, compared to the top trainers, he's only 8% with his first-time starters. But when those first-time starters win and then jump into stakes company, something interesting happens, and we're able to run these kinds of searches on Stats Race Lens. In doing a search for Kenny McPeak for the past 5 years, a second career dirt start after the horse won their maiden race. We could start with this one. 14 starts, 6 wins, 8 in the money. Incredibly large numbers there. This means they won on debut, came back on the dirt as a 2-year-old, and then won 6 of 14 races, 8 of them in the money. Then we can narrow it down even further. And then, as I alluded to a moment ago, what happens when they go right into stakes races? And when they go right into stakes races, the number becomes even more interesting. Past 5 years, second career start, won their maiden race, and then jumped into a stakes race. See all the different filters you could apply here. You could look for all stakes. There's another filter that allows you to look for graded stakes. You could see here that maiden winner last out is an option that you could look for. And then when you do this search, the numbers come back, again, jumping off the page, 10 starts, 5 wins, 6 in the money. So when Kenny's got them ready early, they're usually all the way ready, and they usually perform big. A couple of these horses you probably remember in recent years, Relentless Rider is on the left there, who's a really good one. And a few others there that you see that probably bring back some memories over the past few years. So that was my take on this race. Again, pretty similar to what Christina found, except just sort of a more, there's so many ways to customize searches on Stats Race Lens. We completely independently came up with these angles. We came up with 2 different angles that were related, and I think both build a case for 2 horses who show a lot of promise this weekend at Keeneland for Kenny. And Christina, you got another horse here who also figures to be a bit of a price. That's the 2-horse Upstriker. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, I like the 2 in here, Dan, but I love the angle that you have there from Kenny McPeak and King Fury. I remember King Fury's Dam Terrace. She was pretty impressive, and we saw her out on the West Coast quite a bit. Striker, the 2, is the horse that I'm going to key in on here. He's trained by Ron Moquette. Ron does pretty well with his 2-year-olds just in general. And this particular colt debuted over at Ellis. We have seen a lot of nice horses debut at Ellis. You know, there was a time where maybe you wouldn't have given that form as much credit coming into one of the bigger meets, but that's not the case anymore. This colt, back on August the 30th, debuted going 6.5 furlongs, going 1 turn. He was a very emphatic 5-length winner that day under Joe Talamo. But where I started to kind of filter through the data was with regard to his sire, Upstart. I was a huge fan of Upstart myself. You might remember him. He was a Fountain of Youth winner. He was trained by the late Rex Violet, and he was just a beautiful horse with a lot of scope to his stride, and he's starting to really pass that on. What I was curious about is this horse stretching out to the 2 turns today. So I filtered it to the dirt first route from the offspring of Upstart. Now, there aren't a whole lot of them because we are dealing with a young sire here, but look at this. 4 winners from 6 starts. And one of those horses ran second. He's nearly 5 for 6 with horses trying the route for the first time on the main track. 67% win rate, 83% in the money. And Dan, I think when you combine that with the fact that this horse earned a good figure for his debut, first time out, he looks like the total package to me, and one that might be underestimated a little bit in here. If he runs at all like his other, the other progeny of his sire, Upstart, I think he's going to have a lot to say about the Breeders' Futurity, and could very well be one of those horses that just accelerates and learns very quickly, and could be one of your buzz horses coming in to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile in about 5 weeks.
I love that, especially for me. I've said it a number of times here. My memory, I know you've worked the sales, Christina, and I know Ellis is really good with pedigree as well. But my memory when it comes to stallions and their proficiency over different surfaces with 2-year-olds, so forth and so on, is not great. And so having Stats Racelens is a tool that I could always kind of check and recheck my work with. And then also, again, when you have something, even if it's a small sample like this, that is just, it is such a good search result. It really should play into your handicapping and the way you factor these horses to turn out on a big race day. I know last week, just sort of anecdotally, running searches, we didn't have a show last week. I wish we did, because I found one. Again, it was like a 12 race sample, but it was Mike McCarthy with Rombauer in the American Pharoah Stakes, who didn't win, but his horse is going turf to dirt as 2-year-olds. The number was out of this world. It was like 8 wins and 12 starts. And that's something I would have had no idea about unless I had access to Stats Racelens. And the horse ended up finishing second, paying $960 and $440. So you could find a lot of good prices hidden in some of these races after you get familiar with running some of these searches, and some, obviously a lot of angles you can sort of preset so that they're flags for you within Stats Racelens. Look, we know that Ellis has been waiting patiently, standing by, ready to jump in on this action. And here's your opportunity, Ellis. It comes in the Shadwell Turf Mile. It's the 10th race at Keeneland on Saturday. True Odds, I believe, has Raging Bull as a slight favorite in this race, but it's really competitive field. How do they stack up for you, Ellis?
Well, I love this race. I love the Maker's Mark Mile. I love the Shadwell Turf Mile. It's just a great race. It's fun to handicap. It kind of ended up that there are really few horses here that kind of stick out in this 11-horse field. One maybe possible upsetter. I can't wait to see the morning lines. I have a feeling what they're going to be like. But we're going to start and look at the True Odds running style. And we're going to look at see who the early horses is, because the Keeneland Turf Course plays to all running styles. However, lake runners do a little better here. And when you sort on the grid, which makes it easy to see what the horses' running styles are, you'll see really 2 horses on the E's, Halliday and Spectacular Gem. Halliday is drawn inside, Spectacular Gem's run outside. So when you think about 2 horses like in the lead, the one that's inside is likely going to go. It's going to cause the other to take a stalking position. And then when you go and look at the PPs for Halliday to see, okay, how's he been running? If you didn't already know, you see that he did win the 4-star Dave handicap wire to wire. And by the way, that has been a race that's been productive in history. If I remember correctly, 2015 winner Grand Arch won the 4-star Dave. It's number 2 Halliday. And when Grand Arch won it, believe it or not, he was ridden by Luis Saez, who's riding Halliday here. Grand Arch didn't win wire to wire, but the same thing. Halliday's won 3 of 4. Very consistent Equibase speed figures. The highlight in the green in the speed figure column shows it is the horse's career best figures. And he's got 2 of them and a 114, and then kind of a poor race in the Bernard Baruch, but his 2-mile races, the allowance race and the 4-star Dave, were 115s. So he really does look like the horse to have the lead he likes, and he's very fast in terms of his speed figures. Now we're going to go to the other logical horse based on speed figures, because I looked at the whole field, and that's the 7 Flavius. And Flavius imported to the U.S. back in last November. He ran 4th a couple times, came back as a 5-year-old in June, ran 3rd. And you can see that big improvement from a 109 to a 115 speed figure, winning the Tourist Mile. And that wasn't a graded stakes, but it carried a $750,000 purse. So it will be graded at some point in the near future. And he basically made a big move from 7th to 4th to 1st, hung on very nicely to win. What's really interesting is both Halliday and Flavius are by Warfront. Now, they're both proven, but you still like to check, and I did some interesting check here at Warfront, and you can do that, as Dan said, narrow it down. And we did a check of horses that are, and you can change the distance to 1 mile. It was a turf route, 1 mile, stakes, Warfront, and you can see a very nice number. If you sort on official finish, you'll just get the winners here. And you'll see there have been a number of different winners from Warfront, Flavius and Halliday, War of Wills on that list, Dog Tag, Fog of War, a lot. Now, what's you want to compare, especially if this was a race in which a lot of sires you're unknown, kind of like the Futurity. And by the way, I want to point out real quickly, the Futurity, the horse, Chad Brown's horse Founder, is also by Upstart. It was a great stack Christina came up with. So now you can click on the Show All button, which will compare the same statistic for all the sires in the race, and we'll sort on wins. Once we get there, sort on the win column. You can also sort on percentage, and we'll sort there, and you'll see Warfront leads the field with 14 winners sired by Warfront in these races. The next would be Artie Schiller with the number 4 Bowie's Hero. That's number 1 in the field. So more reasons to think that Flavius and Halliday are good milers. Now we'll go back to PPs, and we'll throw a couple horses in the mix here. The 11 Ivar is a very interesting horse, likely to go at a price. And Ivar finished 3rd to Flavius in the Tourist Mile. It was his 3rd start in the U.S. It was off a short layoff. When we get there, we'll see it. A very interesting horse. He's a Brazilian bred by Agnes Gold, who is a son of Sunday Silence. So very good breeding out of a Smart Strike mare, loves the turf. He won his first 3 races in Argentina powerfully. 2 of them were Group 1s. Now, you can think what you want about Group 1 races, but the Equibase speed figures of 109 and 110 show, if you recall, Halliday and Flavius with 115s, those 109 and 110s are pretty good. Came to the U.S., needed a race first time out. Second time out, won impressively in June with a 107 figure. And then in the Tourist Mile, look at those fractions, 22 and 6, 44 and 8, 107 and 9. They were cooking, and he was battling head and head before fading to 3rd. They take blinkers off this time. You can see up there at the top next to the summary box, it says blinkers off. That's going to cause him to be a little less sharp, and I think he's moving in the right direction to be there. He might even be able to post the upset. The last horse we're going to look at is number 6, Raging Bull, who is proven, and he won the Maker's Mark. He won a race at Keeneland a couple of ways back. You can see his Keeneland record with 1 win, but most importantly, he won the Shoemaker Mile in May, which is 3 races back, a grade 1 there. Went to Keeneland for the July meet and just got beat a nose and a neck in the similar Maker's Mark Mile to War of Will and Parlor. And then he kind of bombed in the Tourist Mile, in the 4-star Dave. I don't know. But again, he's taking blinkers off. And if you want to go back real quick and you see in the equipment line, back to the race on December 1st of 2018, the Hollywood Derby. All those races were without blinkers, and he won 3 of those. He won the Hollywood Derby, he won the Saranac, he won the National Museum Hall of Fame. So taking blinkers off is fine with me. So I think this is a 4-horse race. Halliday is going to be the one to catch those, so I got to give him preference. But Flavius, Ivar, and Raging Bull, I think, stand out, and I'm going to play some exacta and trifecta boxing with these 4, Dan, in the Shadwell Turf Mile.
Yeah, this race always an intriguing betting race. This year, as you mentioned, the pace scenario I think makes it even more intriguing with Halliday. Obviously, that speed being extremely dangerous, and a couple of the others that you mentioned, including Ivar, shown speed before, blinkers coming off. You just got so many things to consider. Spectacular Gem, another one with speed. So we'll see how things unfold. Before we move over to Pimlico for some of these Preakness races, Christina, just wanted to give you an opportunity. If you had an opinion here, if you don't, we can move on to Pimlico.
I've been a big fan of Raging Bull all along. I'm hoping he can kind of get back to it. But to me, it just, even though he's run well without blinkers in the past, it feels like Chad Brown is trying to shake him up a little bit and get him to sort of try again. But Ellis has kind of sold me on Ivar. I'm a little bit worried about that post position to the outside, but that's going to be the huge price, I think, of the race to at least put the money across the board on. That's a great angle that he's pointed out there.
Yep, I like it too. Let's move up north to Pimlico. Another loaded card, Preakness Stakes Day. The first race we'll look at is the James W. Murphy. It's the 9th race of the day. They're going a mile on the turf. And to my eye, at least, there appears to be a whole lot of speed signed up for this one. I thought there were a couple who could make some noise late. And I'll start with the horse on the rail, number 1, Chocolate Bar. As you look at Stats Racelands over on the right side, you can see there's, for that last race, you can see that red upwards pointing object there. Squeeze at the start, 7 wide, upper denied. That little red mark there is the trouble indicator. Whenever you see that, always worth taking a look at a replay. So let's do this. Let's watch the most recent race at Kentucky Downs with Chocolate Bar. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but I do want to watch the start of the race, and then we'll take a look at them as they turn for home. Chocolate Bar is the number 4 horse, so keep an eye on that one. The number 4 horse, as they break from the gate, you can see that he gets away slowly and then gets squeezed. He's left way back there, way back there. He does catch one break, though, and that break is that they go pretty fast up front. And then he makes a move, turning for home, a move that's about 12 wide. He literally is the is furthest out as he makes this move wide. And incredibly, he's able to sustain it for the length of that long stretch at Kentucky Downs. And he just misses by a head at the wire. Again, if you keep your eye on the horse way, way, way on the outside, he almost gets up there after that early trouble, after that long, wide move that he makes. He nearly gets up there. And so I thought this was an extremely impressive race. This was a very strong field, as we've already touched on. Kentucky Downs with the purse money there. A lot of really good horses end up there now. And I thought that he ran an absolutely huge race there. And all of that was after he wired a field in the race prior. He didn't go all that fast early in that one, but he did take steady pressure and then found plenty of reserve to kick late. So very impressive, a horse that won a race in wire-to-wire fashion the race before, then comes back and nearly wins from way off the pace after that early trouble like he had in that last race. So I thought that was super impressive. A horse that can do it either way. You can see those last two numbers, 99 and 96, a huge improvement off of his numbers from earlier this year, where he was posting numbers, a low in the 40s, but on average high 70s and low to mid 80s. So to make that jump, Mike Maker has clearly figured this horse out. Speaking of Mike Maker, I want to move over to the 6 horse briefly. Mike Maker, by the way, has a loaded hand on Saturday at Pimlico. This is a sneakier one, the 6 horse Joltin' Joe. This is one who clearly didn't take to going a mile and 5/16 at Kentucky Downs last out in the Dueling Grounds Derby. A unique ask for a 3-year-old who just won his first race at a mile and a 16th. He's cutting back again here to a more reasonable distance, and he's got the best turf rider in Maryland aboard. Additionally, Horatio Caramanos has ridden a number of live horses for Mike Maker over the years. So whenever Maker has come to Maryland with a nice turf horse, oftentimes Caramanos has been up. So just did a quick search on Maker, and you're going to see this is an instance where you're not going to have a very high win percentage. But if you look through the horses that Caramanos has been on for Maker over the years, I did one that was slightly more expanded initially that had 8 horses, and 6 of them are in the money. Here's one that's a little more focused. Tom, we're good. I mean, there are, again, you could narrow these out or expand them out a bit more. That one was a 4 race sample. It's another here's the 8 race sample. 1 win, 6 in the money. So 6 of the 8 horses, and you can see a number of them finishing second. The one down on the bottom, Love My Honey, that's a horse who stumbled out of the gate. And you could click on the horse's name there, and when you do, it'll actually highlight the race for you where Caramanos rode. You can see in the notes there on the right side, stumbled badly at the start. So that one you could put a line through. You put a line through that one, and they virtually all run. And you're going to get 15 to 21 on this horse, coming in way under the radar. I think that's one to look at who's extremely interesting in what I think is potentially the best betting race of the day at Pimlico on Saturday. Ellis, I know you've got a couple of others in here that you like.
Well, first of all, to your comment about there being a lot of pace in the race, I will say au contraire, because different people look at it different ways. I will say that. And we're going to look at number 2, Sensation, who is also 20 to 1. And that last race, you can see battling on the pace in the Kent, finishing 5th. And before that, wire to wire. Now, again, think about what I talked about with the Shadwell. You've got Halliday having speed, spectacular gem, but Halliday's got position. Sensation has speed, so do others, granted. As you mentioned, Chocolate Bar wired one before last. There's some outside speed here, Ocean's Map, for example. Don Juan Kitten, perhaps, but Sensation has tactical advantage in post. And when a horse gets the rail and the lead, it forces the other speed horses to lose ground, to decide if they want to commit pace suicide, which means go at all costs, or to take back and be in an uncomfortable position where they haven't been before. If Sensation gets the lead, I think he's very tough. And the reason is that Kent Stakes turned out to be a key race. Now, this doesn't show up as the indicator, but if you click on the chart link, and there's a key race indicator I have set on mine that tells me this, you'll look at those circles. Those are horses that won. But not only that, let's look at Gufo. Go to the top horse and click on Gufo, and we'll go to his lifetime PPs. What did he do after that race? He finished second, beaten ahead in the Saratoga Derby to Domestic Spending, who's also running this weekend. Now we'll go, you don't have to go out, you go down to Pixelate, and you can hover over Pixelate where the circle is below that. He won. Let's look and see what that race was. And that race is going to be the Del Mar Derby. What a race. And then we'll go down to Vanzie where the circle is and click on Vanzie, who's also in this race, by the way, and click on that. Vanzie won the Jersey Derby before finishing 8th in the Saranac. Those 1, 2, 3 finishers all ran big. And if you want, you can go down and hover over Talking, which is right above Sensation. You'll see ran 6th. But Sensation's right behind that. Sensation was responsible for the pace, which was the reason, in my opinion, that race was so productive. Go back to the PPs. We can close this chart and go back to the PPs, and you'll see that in spite of finishing 5th, got a 92 Equibase figure, 96 before that. We got a feeling who's going to be the favorites here. The top figure in the race, I'll just say offhand, is 102 and 100. I think Sensation has a big shot in this race. And of course, let's go to the 7 Vanzie PPs. Also, if he could rebound off of the Saranac, which you can, because if you see the track condition, that was a very, very soft turf course. I mean, they went a mile in 139. So that was soft. Before that, a big win with Paco. Paco gets back up today. Another horse with a shot. Real quick, we'll go to the outside to the 13 Bye Bye Melvin, who won the Saranac. Now, I don't know that off turf, the soft turf made all the difference. He had won a couple races back at Tampa, but that was a huge effort with a 97 figure. And then the 10, Don Juan Kitten, who was beaten ahead in that race, earned a 96, and before that a 102. Also, you'll notice, even though Don Juan Kitten showed speed, look at the race before that. He didn't break slowly. He was 14 lengths back. They sizzled early, and he flew home. So Don Juan Kitten does need the lead. So I'm looking at those four, but the price horse is Sensation based on the productive nature and that great thing that Sats Raceland shows you how many horses have come back to win or run second out of that race.
Yeah, I'll say this. Bye bye Melvin. I wasn't there for the 38-1 runner-up finish and the 20-1 win last out in the Saranac. I'm not going to play this horse at 4 or 5-1 certainly. Drawn wide, I think, given his running style, he's going to get caught wide. He's going to lose some ground. So wasn't a big fan of bye bye Melvin. I thought this was a race that set up for potential prices all around. And in terms of the pace, again, I mean, you all could look at this race from home and slice it and dice it any way you like. Monday Morning Quarterback is an interesting one. A horse that was on the Derby trail for a while, showed a lot of speed race after race on the dirt. We'll see what he shows moving over to the turf. He's one of the X factors, as is Ocean's Map. Another one who's jumping up in class, but again, softer, has shown a lot of good early speed. So look, I think those are all variables to consider. One of the ones Ellis mentioned, Vanzi, I think, is a very logical play as well. The Jersey Derby 2-back looked extremely good in that race, and I would cut him a break for the Saranac last out. Not only was it different ground, was it softer, you could see that he actually took a really bad step out of the gate if you watch that replay as well, and just never got comfortable, never got into the race. That race is a complete, line through it, and then judge him based on what he's done before. A very, very exciting race. And another great race is the very next race on this card. Different this year, as a lot of things are. The Black-Eyed Susan Stakes, usually one of the features on Pimlico Friday, along with the Pimlico Special. This year, the Black-Eyed Susan Stakes is a Saturday race. It's the setup race for the Preakness Stakes. I thought this was a really fun betting race as well. There is a little bit more of a standout here, a horse who everyone's got their eyes on, 7-5 in the morning line, Bonnie South. The 5 horse will take, no doubt, a ton of the money with those same connections that we've seen in the winner's circle over and over again in big stakes races. Brad Cox, Florent Giroux. The question is, can we get around this horse? Can we beat Bonnie South, the runner-up to Swiss Skydiver in the Alabama Stakes? Christina, let's just start with you briefly. I know you may not have a fully involved angle here, but you do have some thoughts and feelings about one of the horses in this race who might be coming in a bit under the radar.
Yeah, I do, Dan, and I'm, remembering your angle from our last webinar with Brad Cox and Florent Giroux and how high percentage they are in stakes races. And so Bonnie South is definitely the horse to beat, and she's also shown that she can compete, at distances there or thereabouts. So going a mile and an eighth. And I think with fillies, especially as in the Kentucky Oaks, that starts to really come into play, and you have to consider it in your handicapping. I'm interested in the 3 horse in here, So Darn Hot. And what first kind of piqued my interest was just looking at her pedigree. She's a daughter of Ghoststopper out of a Tis Now mare. And I think the more distance, the better for this filly, and that she's starting to kind of come into her own and maybe be able to have the chance to kind of realize her full potential. She was a $600,000 purchase. Her debut was around 1 turn at Gulfstream on the main track. And I think if you look through her progression, she just seems like she's kind of getting better each and every time. She came back off a little bit of a freshening last time out. She caught a sloppy track at Delaware, allowance event that day, ran from off the pace, and she would finish second to Landing Zone, who is going to come back in the race again on Saturday. Landing Zone breaking from the outside post. She's the 10. She's going to want to be on the front end, and she's one of those that is trying to extend that speed if she can to go the mile and an eighth. But the angle I found was with regard to George Weaver, the trainer of the 3, So Darn Hot. I knew he was kind of high percentage second off the layoff just in general, but then I wanted to see how he did with horses second off the layoff here in this circuit, horses that he brings to Maryland, because you'll see George Weaver with horses kind of all across the country, a lot in New York, a lot in Florida. But this is a good one for him. He wins at a 36% rate when he brings horses second off the layoff to this circuit. That's 5 winners from 14 starts. 8 total in the money, so 57% in the money. And I think a lot of it just comes down to spotting his horse as well and knowing where they're going to fit. Now, this particular race might come up tougher than some of the others that he would send horses to this circuit for. But I think when you combine that with the fact that she should get a fast track again to compete over on Saturday, and that pedigree and that stamina is going to come into play in that final 16th or 8th of a mile, I think So Darn Hot is one of those that might fly under the radar a little bit, Dan, and she should appreciate the conditions that she'll be lining up against for Saturday. Bonnie South is the horse to beat, but I'll include So Darn Hot on any other tickets and maybe some kind of exactive trifectas and those types.
All right, and I know that Ellis is also going to try to beat Bonnie South again with potentially a little bit of a speed play, a little pace speed play. Ellis, which horse drew your attention?
Before I do that, let me say So Darn Hot's a great pick, and I'm not knocking Christina's at all. And I was very intrigued to her. And Stats Raceland showed me one thing: the main foal of the dam is Come Dancing, who is a really, really good horse. And I was just trying to see, remind myself of Come Dancing career record, which I could do, and we're not going to go to it. But Ghost Zapper gives the horse the ability to go 9. But Come Dancing's interesting because she's only been effective up to a mile and a 16th. So that was the reason I'm going to consider So Darn Hot for exotic. The reason I didn't make her a contender. Let's go to the true odds, and we'll go to the pace projector. And it did look like there was speed because, as you mentioned, Landing Zone has tactical speed. Miss Marissa has tactical speed. But oh my gosh, look at this pace projector. Miss and Bo is projected to be out on a big lead early. And again, not like the other races in which you got a horse in the 2 post. This time she's in the 7. But you look inside, when people look at their PPs, you'll see there's really nothing inside her of the other 6 horses inside that has this kind of desire to lead. And this does show her in the lead and then fading a little bit late. Let's go to the PPs now. For Bonnie South will go to first, who is the one to beat. And I'm going to say this is a 2-horse race between the 7 and the 5. I plan to box the 2 in the exacta strongly. Bonnie South has the best closing speed in the race. Of course, she made up 5 lengths in the stretch into Swiss Skydiver in the Alabama, the cutback from 10 furlong. You see that Alabama 6.6 third second, career best 101 Equibase speed figure. Cutting back means her late speed should be more effective. She did it 2 races before that in the Fairgrounds Oaks when she went 6.621. So she's the one with Ms. and Bo for me that I think should run very well. I also want to say I'm really disappointed that nobody picked number 6, and I'll let Tom, who's managing our thing, go to number 6 and show everybody why nobody picked number 6. And I'll let it go at that.
There you go. Well, you're our sharp star. We don't need another one. Yeah, look, I'm all for a Horacio de Paz horse on a big day. I'd also look for, again, as sort of the resident, Maryland guy who plays, Laurel, on random Saturdays when everybody's playing, stakes races at Saratoga. Look for those big Maryland teams and trainers. Graham Motion always seems to have a big Preakness day. Sagamore Farm, Sagamore Racing. You'd be surprised how often they show up 2 or 3 times on a Preakness day. So as you're looking through this card, keep an eye out for those. I just want to mention one other horse in this race in particular, the Black Eyed Susan Stakes. This one is, you want to talk under the radar. I went to the same race that Ellis did in terms of a key race, the Bison City at Woodbine last out, and the 2-horse Truth Hurts. I'm anticipating the pace in here could sort of heat up. I don't think Ms. and Bo is going to have it quite as easy as Ellis does. I think you've got Landing Zone, who's got a ton of speed. I also think Project Whiskey and Miss Marissa won't be too far behind. Truth Hurts stretched out to a mile and a 16th at Woodbine last out. In that race, Ms. and Bo, I thought, had things all her own way. Truth Hurts just missed getting up for second to a Fleet Catherine, who's a really nice Woodbine-based horse. If you watch the race, we're not going to play it. Watch the gallop out as well. The horse gallops out with plenty of energy. Even her Audubon Oaks wasn't all that bad. She drew wide, traveled wide, really had no shot at catching the loose pace setter there, Monday Call, who set a track record in that race. She's the daughter of Tonalist. She gives every indication she wants to go long. I think Truth Hurts, especially given the fact that we all know Chad Summers had Mind Your Biscuits, but not exactly doesn't always show up on big race days and sweet graded stakes races. I think that has this horse coming in a bit under the radar. But if you look at those Equibase speed figures, I mean, look at the most recent dirt figure off the break in February. She went from 66 to 91. That's a huge jump. Slight drop down there on the all-weather track at Woodbine. But I thought that Audubon Stakes was a big race at 7 furlongs for that long break. I think this horse wants to go longer. And again, with a better trip, and you got Sheldon Russell, who's as cagey as they come, one of the veterans there at Pimlico riding. I'm very, very intrigued by this horse. I don't know if this horse gets up to win, but I think she's a factor at what might end up being somewhere in the way of 30 or 35 to 1. So keep an eye on Truth Hurts. I would include her in your exotic tickets at least. All right, let's move on to the big one. Race 11, the Preakness Stakes. For the first time, a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Classic. As we know, this race was scheduled, as always, for May and rescheduled, as everything has been this year. Because of that, we have a really interesting bunch here, headlined by Authentic, your Kentucky Derby winner, and a couple of other horses who'll take plenty of money. Art Collector, of course, who missed the Derby due to a foot injury, being described as minor, and coming back here will certainly take a ton of action. And then you've got the superstar filly, Swiss Skydiver, taking on the boys, trying to become the first filly since Rachel to beat the boys in the Preakness. So Christina, you can set this up for us. How do you envision this race unfolding, and which horses did that lead you to?
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky race, I think, with regard to the pace. If we want to just start on the True Odds page, just to kind of help people get an idea of how that's going to shake out, because I think you're going to see speed from a lot of your main competitors. You can filter it for run style as well. I mean, you can see clearly Authentic on the right-hand side there in the grid is very fast, but I think in there with him, you're going to have Art Collector, you're going to see Swiss Skydiver, you're going to see Thousand Words. They're drawn right alongside each other, those three horses. So wondering what is actually going to happen with regard to them. And the longer I looked at this race, the more I wondered if I was just overthinking it in general, because with Authentic in his form, he is 5 for 6 lifetime. The only horse that has ever defeated him is Honor AP, who, if you were with us for our last webinar, he was my Derby horse. He has since been retired with a tendon injury. So maybe we're just going too deep and overthinking it in general, but I'm going to settle on Art Collector in here. And he's the number 3. With regard to that injury, it was basically a minor hoof injury. He grabbed the bulb of his heel, which is kind of a real sort of sensitive spot for horses, but it's easy for them to nick themselves and hurt themselves right there. And it's something that, some trainers might have gone ahead and tried to patch him up or run him, but Tommy Drury was very, very conservative. And if you look at his training pattern since then, so the Kentucky Derby was that first Saturday in September, right? He came back with a work on September the 12th. That to me is a very good sign. They got him fixed up. They didn't miss any real training with him in those couple of weeks. He has worked 3 times since then, and he arrived today in Maryland, so I'm interested to get my eyes on him on track, tomorrow morning, hopefully. But the angle that I started to look at was this trainer, Tommy Drury, and Brian Hernandez Jr. I think Brian Hernandez Jr. is one of the more underrated riders in the country. I think if you watch him, he is so sharp in terms of pace dynamics, and he's always saving ground. And whether that is on the main track or whether that is on the turf course, you see those results from him. When you look at Tommy Drury and Brian together, they have a pretty good win percentage, 24%. He rides him a fair amount, 20 wins from 84 starters, 48% in the money. And this is a small barn. Tom Drury has only run, I shouldn't say only, it's a lot, but he's run 100 horses this year. It's not one of those big powerhouses that they're going to kind of accumulate those numbers very quickly. And then I filtered it one further with regard to these two and stakes races. And Art Collector is a big part of this statistic, as you're going to see in a moment. They're 3 for 7 in stakes races together. 2 of those wins coming from Art Collector. But these are kind of the little guys teaming up against the Bafferts and the Asmussens of the world, and they are winning more than their fair share of these stakes races. I really think, Dan, that Brian Hernandez Jr. is going to get this horse to rate. He has rated before. He's rated when Brian was aboard him in a 7 furlong race on May the 17th at Churchill. You can see that in his past performances. I think he's going to tuck back in, save ground. He's going to let Authentic go. He's going to hope that somebody else maybe goes with him and just sit that spot and wait to make his move with Art Collector. I think this horse has a ton of ability, and their patience will hopefully pay off in a big way on Saturday.
We got Big Money Mike. Big Money Brian has a good ring to it as an alternative. He doesn't get any credit, like you said, but he's low-key just this spectacular jockey who always wins big races, and he always shows up. Very rarely do you bet on a horse that Brian Hernandez is riding, and then after the race, oh man, what a bad ride. Never say that with Brian Hernandez. He always gives the horse the best possible shot to win. I will say I'm going to use Art Collector in a way to transition to Ellis, because I'd like Ellis's take on this. I thought of the 3 favorites, Authentic, Art Collector, and Swiss Skydiver, who I assume will be third choice. I thought Art Collector was the most viable, and I can make a case in a little bit for why I think Authentic is vulnerable. My only knock on Art Collector in particular, again, I have no doubt if Tom Drury, if they're racing this horse and if they're confident with the way he's doing, that he is healthy and fit to race. The question is, does that mean that we should still expect a peak performance from him, right? I mean, does what he's gone through in any way, even if you look at it as a disruption in training in the week leading up to a big race, does that in some way compromise his ability to run the kinds of races that we saw him running in the Ellis Park Derby and in the Bluegrass Stakes? And the only other thing I'll mention is that in the Ellis Park Derby, the horses who finished behind Art Collector, Attachment Rate, a horse I loved in the Kentucky Derby, I'll get back to him. Necker Island, Winning Impression. How did those horses finish in the Derby? Necker Island finished 9th. Winning Impression was 12th. Attachment Rate ended up second to last in the field. An embarrassment for me, certainly. But does that in some way reflect negatively upon some of the company that Art Collector has kept? Again, just raising it because I think it's worth having a discussion about where he fits, that is Art Collector, in this field right now. Ellis, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to start with just giving the 4 contenders out, and this is also, of course, our Equibase race of the week. So it's out there for everybody, and nothing's going to change for me. I'm going to say real quick, Christina made a comment about Hernandez, Drury, fantastic. I think Jay Fribben wrote an article about Brian Hernandez with his work ethic and how hard he is. People should take a look at that. Probably a great article. And you made a comment about competing against the big barns, the Asmussens. Well, Asmussen has a horse in here in the 10 pneumatic that's 20-1 in the morning line, which you hardly ever see for the leading North American trainer who has a legitimate chance to win the race on every single level, in my opinion. So pneumatic's my top pick, then Art Collector, Authentic, and Swiss Skydiver. I'm only using those 4 in exotics as keys for first and second. Boxes, exactas, trifectas. The win bet certainly looks like pneumatic to me. So we're going to start with why. Look at that pattern. This is what you want to see in a 3-year-old, whether the race is in May, March, June, August, September, 90, 96, 98, 101, 113. A horse getting faster throughout his year, well-spaced races, not missing a dance when he did it. Even though 4th to Tisdalaw, 3rd to Maxfield, those numbers keep going up. The Pegasus, a mile and a 16th, was fine. It was a decent race on every single level. And that 113, reference that, because when we get back to looking at horses at much lower odds, that's going to be important. Now we'll say, okay, can he get 9 furlongs? He didn't run 9 furlongs well in the Belmont. So click on Uncle Mo. And especially with 3-year-olds, I love doing these sire queries for horses, and you could set the distance. And this one is going to be dirt route stakes, and I'm going to go 3-year-olds only. And you can sort on official finish. You'll see, first of all, the win percent is solid, 21, 37 wins, plus 27. But look at all the different horses. Harvest Moon, who just won at Santa Anita last week, and Vuittant. Uncle Chuck, who was somebody's choice, if I remember a few races back. Donna Veloce, King Guillermo, Modernist. I'm rubbing it in, Dan. Sorry. Anyway, King for a Day. Now do the show all button, and again we'll compare all the sires in this race and see where they are, and we can sort on number of wins, which I think in this case is more indicative of win percentage, even though you'll see a lot of starts in some cases. Uncle Mo on top by far in terms of the number of wins and the win percentage, except for Daredevil, who's had Swiss Skydiver has really led with that one. Uncle Mo very solid. Now we're going to go to the true odds. Now we're going to look at the pace projector, which real quick, which we talked about, and you'll see Authentics in front, but look where Pneumatic is in the 10. Now he's camped out there, and that may or may not be true. It doesn't mean he's going to be wide, but number 10 in the first call is camped out in a great position with Swiss Skydiver and perhaps NY Traffic sitting there in second. That's a great spot for him. He won't be that wide, which is the way he ran the Pegasus last time out. Then go to the late pace and sort on the grid on late pace. Who is going to be coming fastest? Well, Pneumatic and Swiss Skydiver. And you look at the difference in odds, you see 20 to 1, 6 to 1. Certainly, it's kind of confirming the same thing I started with, which these are the 4 contenders. We'll go back to the also real quick look at the true odds. You'll see there's a big overlay. The fair odds or adjusted true odds on Pneumatic should be 6 to 1. I'm hearing a lot of wise guy buzz about him, so it might not be 20, but still pretty high. Now I'll go back to the PPs, and we're going to look at Art Collector real quick. Again, keep in mind that 113 for Pneumatic. Art Collector 104, 102, 106 consistent, not at the same level, but certainly consistent. And the fact that the 2 comments, you look at the short comments on the right, written out and going away, I believe he could have gone faster. Then we'll go down to Authentic, of course, the favorite off the Derby win. And you'll see that he paired his 109 Equibase speed figures in the Haskell and the Kentucky Derby. Now, a pairing of figures normally means a horse that can regress or can bounce up. Back in the Sham Stakes of 113, still consistent, but I will say, according to the Equibase speed figure, Pneumatic ran faster, and he's going to be much higher odds. And then we're going to go down to Swiss Skydiver, or up to Swiss Skydiver, the 4, and we already know she can get 9 furlong because she got 10 in the Alabama. She was second in the Kentucky Oaks, second to Art Collector in the Bluegrass, the 108 in the Santa Anita Oaks, and the 106, 109. So you got Swiss Skydiver and Authentic with 109 figures, Art Collector 106 best, and you got Pneumatic 113. If that race is to be believed, especially with the sire stats of Uncle Mo, I think Pneumatic is a fantastic bet as a win bet in the Preakness.
Yeah, I'm with you on Pneumatic. I think you've got some good spacing between his races. Took a big step forward last out. Was really geared down at the end of that race. Had to be pulled up after the wire because he just wanted to keep running. I think he's coming into this one as good as you could possibly come into it, knowing that again, at least to my mind, there are a couple of question marks with some of the favorites. I mentioned Authentic, and then I would make a little bit of a case about why I don't absolutely love him here. And really, it's because I think he ran his race in the Derby, cleared from the widest post of all, had so much in reserve to repel Tiz the Law. And why did Tiz the Law not get by him when you thought sort of at the top of the stretch that he was going to go right by? Because Tiz the Law had run his race in the Haskell, in the Traverse. And so, and look, again, these are theories, and you can make these theories over time because you realize that these horses are horses and they're not machines, and they can't run 2 or 3 or more consecutive peak efforts before they start regressing a little bit. There are form cycles. And so I think with Authentic, he's had an incredible year. I wouldn't doubt him. The other thing for Authentic, where I think he got away a little easier than he might here in the Derby, was that New York Traffic took that right-hand turn out of the gate. And in an effort to impede the horses to his outside, Paco Lopez missed an opportunity, in my feeling, in my opinion at least, to actually get to the lead himself, which he could have done. New York Traffic has a ton of speed, and still, in spite of all the antics, in spite of going into that turn wide to try to keep Tiz the Law out wide, New York Traffic was still on the heels of Authentic coming off the turn and into the backstretch. If you watch the replay, I think New York Traffic takes a straight path here directly to the lead, and I would not be surprised if New York Traffic was on the lead, because I think he's as fast as Authentic and can certainly make him work a little harder in this race. So those are my thoughts on that one. While I make the case against Authentic, I do want to say, and I want to bring Christina back in for this for some input, because it specifically relates to the other Baffert. And I know that, being based in California, covering the circuit there, knowing how the Baffert barn works, in my opinion, you have this horse in 1,000 Words, who we know is not going to go out, same ownership team as well, is not going to go out and hassle Authentic, right? I mean, Authentic is going to be the Baffert that goes. 1,000 Words will be taken back a bit, and he's won from off the pace. Look at the Robert B. Lewis Stakes in February. He has the ability to do that. If you're looking at 1,000 Words and saying, boy, how does he figure here? He flipped in the paddock before the Derby. What's up with this horse? The blinkers now going back on here after they were off. He's he's trained better apparently with blinkers on, but he's run his best races with blinkers off. For me, I would turn that question on its head and say, why would Baffert and Spendthrift enter this horse unless they thought he was coming into this ready to fire a big shot? And if he wasn't just absolutely right, they're not going to run him. Certainly if he was feeling ill effects from that fall that he had, or if they think that he's somehow now unraveling in some way. So I actually, in sort of a reverse logic play here, and thinking that he may actually benefit from a very fast pace, I landed on 1,000 Words as my top choice. Christina, am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy at all, actually, Dan. And even coming into the Kentucky Derby, unfortunately, he didn't get the chance to run because of that mishap in the paddock. But I think he was very well meant into the Kentucky Derby as well. This is a horse that beat Honor AP. And remember, I said Honor AP, the only horse that has ever beat Authentic. He's not to be underestimated at all. And with regard to the blinkers going on, I think what they're trying to do is just to get him to kind of focus and sharpen up a little bit in his races, because he's kind of a lazier type horse. He's lazier in the mornings in terms of his work, personality wise, and in terms of his effort. He's very different to Authentic. Authentic's very quirky. Authentic is very on the bridle. He's going to give you 100% every time. 1,000 Words, you have to ask him a little more. So I think you're right as far as the pace goes. Authentic is the horse that is going to really go for it from the Baffert barn. 1,000 Words will be the horse that takes back, and they might try to get him to the outside if they can. But I do think that he has every chance to win the race, and that he's one of those that, started off strong and then maybe fell off form for a little bit. But Baffert has him back on track now, and he's really kind of turning the screws and getting him mentally to catch up to where his physical ability might have always been. And I did talk to Jimmy Barnes 2 days ago. He is upset that he's not able to be here. These are the races he lives for. He's going to be watching from home. But I think for Jimmy, he was just gutted to have this horse scratched in the paddock of the Kentucky Derby. I mean, that's never something that you want to be responsible for, be a part of, and this is a lifelong horseman that has worked with some of the best over the years that we have ever seen. So I think there's a big part of this team that is really rooting for 1,000 Words to have the opportunity to show what he can do. And I agree, Dan, I think he's a win candidate.
All right, that makes me feel a lot better. It really does. If the pace does indeed heat up, as I've alluded to, certainly, and I think is a possibility, especially if New York Traffic goes from the gate, and Art Collector, who could potentially take back. I think Ellis is making the case that Art Collector may not be necessarily, sent out to at least lead, but should at the very least put some token pressure. Swiss Skydiver will probably be not too far off. It could benefit a closer or two. Christina, I know there's one in particular that you like down near the rail. Tell us about Mr. Big News.
Yeah, I just think that Mr. Big News is probably going to get a piece of it again. And I'll be honest, he surprised me, jumping up to rally from off the pace in the Derby the way that he did. But not a lot of horses made up as much ground in the final stages of that race as he did. I expected some others to really come with that rally, and Mr. Big News really impressed me. I think we're going to have, enough pace up front. We've talked about this over the last couple of moments, but I think he rallies again. Gabe Sayers is going to ride him the exact same way. He's done that on both occasions that he's been in the saddle, and it resulted in a win in the Oaklawn Stakes, that third place effort in the Kentucky Derby. So if you are playing those trifectas and supers especially, Mr. Big News is one you have to throw in once more. I don't think that last race was a fluke for him.
Ellis, I know you had Swiss Skydiver sort of at the bottom end of your selections there. Do you have concerns that maybe she is heading in the wrong direction, maybe showing slight signs of regression? Obviously, ran a big race in the Kentucky Oaks, but on her best day, you got to figure she wins that race. What's your thinking with Swiss Skydiver in terms of where she's at going into this one?
I think the pattern, when you look at those speed figures, there's 97, 106, 109. I think she's not regressing. She couldn't get to She Shares the Devil. She was out finished, but she still finished third, second, so she passed. I think if I had to give like a percentage of where I think she's going to be first or second, I think she's got a big shot, at least at 33%. I think she has a better shot to finish first or second than Authentic might, in terms of the fact that she doesn't miss the show. And Authentic, as you pointed out, he may have ran his race in the Derby. 1,000 words, the blinkers on, as you mentioned, when he had blinkers on earlier, he actually rated. It was weird. To Christina's point, it did cause him to focus better back in the Robert Lewis. The blinkers, he ran on from fourth to win the blinkers. So he actually relaxed. He ran off a little more in the shared belief without the blinkers, which is really interesting because that's opposite of what you think when a horse adds blinkers. But I have no problem with Swiss Skydiver. Again, the 9 furlongs, 9.5 in this case, right up her alley. She's going to be third early or fourth, as I think Pneumatic will be. Authentic, I don't think anybody's going to try and take him on, except NY Traffic, as you mentioned, in which case that would be great because that'll set it up. It just depends on what kind of position. Swiss Skydiver and Art Collector will get inside position. They won't be losing ground because Accession's got no speed and Mr. Big News has no speed. So they're going to be in the 1 and 2 paths going into the first turn after Authentic likely clears, maybe NY Traffic, puts them third and fourth. Pneumatic drops in about fifth, which is fine because that's where he was when he won his allowance race at Oaklawn. He closed from fifth, and that's how I see it. I don't have a problem with Swiss Skydiver going in the wrong direction.
Ellis loves Pneumatic, one of 3 horses in for Steve Asmussen, the other 2, Max Player and Accession, off a really long break. Christina, just briefly, I just kind of want to make sure we click through all the horses in the field, and I thought these 2 were interesting for a couple of different reasons. Max Player gets a new rider. Asmussen has said that they're going to try to keep this horse a lot closer to the pace. Paco Lopez up. I've gone through the body of work for Paco Lopez during this Triple Crown run. What do you think? I mean, taking a horse out of his preferred running style and Max Player in the third leg of the Triple Crown, a horse that I'm not sure at all has even the ability to stick with the horses who are fastest in this race. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think that keeping him closer gives him a better shot? And does he factor into any of your tickets?
Yeah, I gotta be honest, I don't think it's gonna work. I mean, I know, as you say, Paco Lopez, he sort of has an impact no matter where he finishes in the race. He still ends up having an impact on the race. But I think you can hustle this horse as much as you want, and he's just not as fast as half of the other runners in the field. He might end up sitting mid-pack. I hope he comes out of the gate straight, because let's remember that Authentic is just to his outside. But I don't think that strategy is going to pay off, and I don't think it's going to improve Max Player's finish position in the end.
Ellis, what about Accession down on the rail? I remember him flying on in the Rebel Stakes over a sloppy track. Who is that horse? That horse at 80-something to 1 or whatever he was at that day. Finished second to Nadal. Obviously, Nadal was at the top of this class at that time. Long break here. Do you give this horse any shot to factor into the exotics?
I'll probably use all in third. My ticket that I'm playing with right now is going to be Pneumatic and Art Collector over Pneumatic, Swiss Skydiver, Authentic, and Art Collector overall. I don't think, the horse coming back off 6 months, going 9.5 furlongs on works alone is really, really a tough ask. But again, depending on the pace. He will be nearly last early with Mr. Big News, maybe far back as well. A couple others will be pressures getting tired, and he could sneak in for a piece. So I would not leave him off the third position in the trifecta ticket.
All right. The last two horses we have not discussed at all, just to give them some time here, if not equal time. The 6 horse, Jesus's Team, and the 11 horse, Live Your Beast Life. Christina, any feelings about either of those two horses who seem to be perhaps a cut below in this field?
Yeah, they would really surprise me in here, Dan. I will say that with Live Your Beast Life, he does look like he's improving with distance and with time, and you would expect that with his pedigree. So maybe he takes another step forward, but he is going to need to improve quite a bit. And Jesus' Team, he looks fantastic out there. I've watched him train. I mean, he's a beautiful horse, and you can see why. Again, he's improving kind of each and every start, but they have some sort of humble beginnings, these two, and they're going to have to really jump up if they want to compete with some of the others. I think there are some more attractive prices like Pneumatic, who Ellis has pointed out, if you're looking for a price in here.
I will say the riders on those two, heavy on Toledo, on Jesus's Team, Live Your Beast Life, Trevor McCarthy. I was lucky enough to as I was, becoming more involved in racing in a professional capacity, really got to see some of these guys grow up, both in their late teens and early 20s when they broke onto the Maryland circuit. These years later now have done some really, really great work locally. McCarthy, of course, I think is pretty widely regarded as one of the top jockeys on the circuit. It would be great to see one of them grab a share, grab a slice. Ellis, any thoughts on either of those two or anyone else who, I know you said you're going all in the third spot, who you would say, look, you want to include this horse on your ticket just in case?
Well, again, I can't rule out any horse for hitting the board here. Jesus's Team, he kind of ran one pace in the Pegasus behind Pneumatic, but did get second. 8-horse field, was only beaten 3/4 by Live Your Beast Life and the Jim Dandy, and Live Your Beast Life closed. Live Your Beast Life, if you go to him real quick go to the 11 in True Odds, you'll see that nice pattern. It's improving, like I've been talking about with a 3-0, which you like, which is 91, 98, 107. For speed figures, he got 9 furlongs, 9.5, because he's a ghost zapper. I'm not worried about him. So certainly that's a possibility. I toyed with him. But something that's interesting to me, and this is just personal preference, look at his first race. He debuted in a maiden claimer. And then we don't need to go back to Jesus's Team, but his, 5 of his first 6 races were claiming races. We're talking about grade 1 at the level. And yes, people make mistakes. And yes, Maximum Security was in a maiden claimer at one point, but it's rare that horses that their connections thought had enough value to put them up for sale end up at this quality of level. And it's just, for me, you can call me a little avant-garde or, just little class issues here, but I don't know they're good enough to win. However, odds make up for a big deal of concern, and at 30-1, if somebody wanted to bet $2 to win on them, I would not book that bet. I would let them make that bet.
Okay, you are avant-garde, Ellis. So avant-garde. Ellis, by the way, you can catch in a number of different places on Equibase, and oftentimes on America's Best Racing, where you can find me on Saturday, starting at 4:30. We're going to be having a Preakness live show streaming on AVR social media channels. Ellis will hop in for a little bit. I think we haven't confirmed a time yet, but we'll work out those details. So make sure you catch the Preakness live show starting at 4:30. Also, if you're looking for coverage all week in the lead up and on Preakness Day, you can catch Christina Blacker on TVG. And so she's in Baltimore to cover the Preakness. The actual race itself is on NBC on Saturday, so make sure you're tuned in for that. I want to thank Christina and Ellis for spending the past hour or so with us here. A lot of great insights. If you've seen anything you like or you're curious about on Stats Race Lens, Ellis operates the Stats Race Lens Equibase 24-hour helpline. He's the one to reach out to at UberCapper. Is always great about responding to questions about the product and how to optimize it once you do hop on board. And the time to hop on board is, of course, right now. There are two special offers from Stats Race Lens. One is open to everyone. It's 30% off all subscriptions. The promo code is SRLBC30. That'll give you 30% off any subscription on Stats Race Lens. That promo is good through the Breeders' Cup. And if you're a new customer, if you've never tried Stats Race Lens, but you're intrigued and you want to dabble a little bit, limited to new subscribers only on Stats Race Lens, $1. All you got to do is come up with $1 for a 1-month unlimited subscription. The promo code there is SRLM1E. Thank you again for joining us, and good luck everyone this weekend on a huge racing weekend. Keeneland Falls Stars and Preakness Stakes.